Strait, caught between the tides of the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, buzzing with traffic and daily activity. The Bay of Gibraltar is one of the deepest bays found in Europe. But there's more than meets the eye as we delve into our waters. Artificial reefs have been part of our waters since the 70s, helping marine life colonize in the area. One of the people behind this initiative was Eric Shaw and his charity, The Helping Hand.
Where it came about was when I was in the military. That's when I first got to go underwater, and that was back in the 60s as well, a long time ago now. In 64, 65, arrived here in Gibraltar, fantastic place to be. We had the facilities to actually go diving through the engineers here, one because we were military, but there was no civilian diving clubs per se, they were all military ones, so to a great extent I was greatly privileged to be able to get underwater. At no cost of course, because everything was provided by the military. Back in the very, very early 70s when we were doing a lot of diving, there was a lot of my colleagues, all ex-military people like Stuart Mason. We were going diving, we were still diving with the engineers as it were, that was slowly becoming the Joint Services Sub-Aqua Club. Once again, because we were ex-military people, we were privileged. But it was around that time we started to change it and we set up our own diving club, which is now called the Treble 8 Club, which still goes today with Frank Denham and myself were the only civilian instructors here in Gibraltar, so what we thought we'd do was start a civilian side. We were slowly moving away with a lot of people who'll turn around and say he used to go spearfishing, which we did back in those days. And it was seeing all the life under the water, and even then how it was dwindling, that I thought we need to do something about it. And that's when the first part of building an artificial reef came in. We've got to put something back in there.
Getting a little bit drafty out here. As we said, we're underway now. We've got Mark Caniper and his crew off the Texas there, all tied alongside, and as you can see, we're moving. Here we are on the Sea Hawk, going to take it out to destination now. We've got a standby boat off to one side here. Everything's been prepared. Water is slowly being pumped into the boat. We're going to go out round the mole now, make our way down to a location called Seven Sisters, and we hope we're going to be able to put it perfectly in position. If you look down off the side here, you can actually see the Texas alongside here now. All the guys are on there ready to help us out when we get on the site there. And what we will be doing is commissioning this wonderful vessel down onto the artificial reef. All we've got to do now is put up with a little bit of a wind. It's not quite like it was when we were on site. A little bit more windy when we get out there. Get down to the location, go below, sever the pipes, more water coming in, and then watch the boat slowly sink.
The Sea Hawk and sinking a wreck underwater is a little bit more difficult than people will actually imagine, actually. And we sank a boat called the Sea Hawk that was donated to us. And it's not one of these things that you just drag out into the water and then you sink it. There's a lot of preparation. There are things that you have to take out of it. Asbestos has to disappear. Oil out of the engines has to go. The diesel out of the tanks has to go. They have to be flooded with salt water. And you've got to put the salt water in before you take it out and sink it. We're not waiting for it to fill up with salt water. You're filling it up with salt water, so it will flush out what other diesels and oils are in there. You do the same thing with the engines. And then you clean the sumps and you clean the bilges. And anything that's going to float has to be taken out of it. Then you've got to mark the boat in different positions there, where you're going to cut holes so that the air migration, when the boat starts to go under, the air inside migrate, can actually get out. If the air can't get out, it can turn the boat over, it can turn turtle. It can go down too quickly. As it goes down, it can spin, because what we want is we want the boat to go down, settle on the seabed, and sit on its keels, so it looks like a boat when it's sitting on the surface of the sea, giving it the maximum of its surface to life in the sea. It takes a long time. Putting the hulls in takes a long time. Taking doors off that you don't want to close, because what you've got to take into consideration as well, Divers are going to go on these things, whether they wooden, whether they steel, and if you've got hatches that can close and you've got doors that can swing shut, you can trap a diver on the inside. So you've got to take all of these things off. Any glass in windows in the cabin has got to be taken out. Divers are going to go through in it, but it also catches things on the inside of it. There's got to be openings for a diver to move through and for the sea life to move about, because it's their particular block of flats, not the diver's block of flats. But you've got to have this thing in the back of your mind, someone's going to come along and dive on this, and you don't want them to get stuck inside of it. You don't want something coming out of it that's going to be detrimental to the sea. It takes a long time to prepare. It also takes a long time to actually put it in the position you want it in and to sink. It's not something that happens overnight.
A nice wreck for me is the Seahawk, and the reason for that is that before I was working at the museum, I worked for a while at Queensway Quay as the pier master, and for a while the Seahawk was tied up there, but it was beyond economic repair, so we actually went out and saw it sink. And it was very strange when we first dived it, immediately after it had sunk. We went down onto the seabed and you could still feel where the wood of the hull was warm from where the sun had been on it before it sank. So it was really nice to see it floating and then see it sink and then dive on it straight away.
I could forgive you and see the children are starving and their houses were destroyed. Don't think they could forgive you. When seas will cover lands and when men will be no more. Don't think you can forgive you. Yeah, when there'll just be silence and when life will be.
It must be pointed out first and foremost, here in Gibraltar we were the first people in Europe to build an artificial reef. They weren't doing it anywhere else in Europe, not in Spain, not in France, not in Germany, not in England. Little old Gibraltar was, you know, doing a number one. We were doing a first, as it were. We know the location of all of these wrecks. There are existing wrecks out there that have gone down in, the 1880s and the very early 40s, and some in the First World War as well. But most of the wrecks that we've put down, we know where we've put them, and they start on the South Mole, work themselves past Seven Sisters, past the 100-ton gun, past Rosier Bay itself, around Parsons Lodge, all the way along where what people call the quarry, Camp Bay is, Little Bay, beyond Little Bay, round off towards Europa Reef, and onto the eastern side. There's about 40 or 50 wrecks out there. They're a mixture of metal ones and wooden ones, and some of them are just huge concrete work platforms that have got a sell-by date and they've gone, but instead of breaking them up, taking them away, you drop them on the seabed and it's like a block of flats underwater to sea life. It just moves in and takes over. It's like when they built the Varel Bay. 1 minute all the houses were empty, next minute they're full. Happens the same thing underwater.
Over, don't think you will forgive you.
The benefits of the artificial reef, are there. You've only got to talk to the fishing clubs. If people in the fishing clubs haven't noticed the benefits to the artificial reef, then they're only seeing what's on the end of their little hook when they lift it back out of the water. But it attracts an awful lot of fish. It turns itself into a criador. Around the wreck itself, you've got fish that can come in, lay their eggs, and breed around the wreck. But when they've grown up, they don't stay there forever. They move out into open waters. They go and investigate different places. They go up and down the detached mole, the south mole, the north mole, or they swim back out into the open sea where they get caught by other fishermen out there. All you're doing is you're creating hotels for those that want to breed, and you're creating flats and homes for those that stay in coastal waters all year round, but it's one of those things that's greatly needed because it's all sand around our shoreline and there's no topography. These are little islands, little oases where sea life can move in, it can breed, it can move out. Boat fishermen can go around there with their rods and fish them. Shore fishermen get benefits from it. Life in the sea gets benefits from it. The seabirds that come down get benefits from it. There is a knock-on effect to it. We're helping it just by putting topography on the seabed. That is all we're doing, building houses for sea life.
Yeah, you never said a word, you didn't send me no letter. Don't think I could